I'd like to start by thanking you for giving me the honor of speaking this evening at this event. It is amazing to hear all the activities that you have been doing. I've been hearing about QED for years, and it is great to see all of the work brought together in this way. So this is a real honor for me. Thank you. I was asked to speak about social inclusion and integration. And I realized that usually I'm asked to speak about integration, and I define integration as social inclusion, and that I haven't really defined social inclusion. So I'm going to, oh, something funny's happened there. I'm going to be talking a little bit about information from the study that we were just discussing, the Syria LTH study. And this is a study that has been following the same cohort of Syrian newcomers for our third year this year. We're going to be collecting information from them for our third year. We have about 1,930 people in the project, and they are in Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. I'm going to speak briefly about some of the information from that study, but I will also talk about some information from some other research we have done with other communities, primarily across Ontario. So let me return to this question of what is social inclusion. And let me start by saying, how would you define social inclusion? What are the words that come to mind? Yes. Food, which I hope will be coming soon. Yes. So I actually decided to look at how social inclusion is being defined in other activities or interventions that are being done and posted on the internet. And when you do that, these are the words that come up. And so I created this word cloud so we can see what the dominant themes are in how other people think about social inclusion. You'll notice that the word disabled is there, and that is because people often talk about the need for social inclusion for individuals living with disability. But there are a number of common themes that I think are really important. They include things like respect, dignity, values, recognition. The importance of seeing the whole person and respecting the diversity in the person. But notice also that many of these words are very active. Words like recognize, work, promote, support. And that social inclusion is not just about recognizing the person, but also working to create inclusion. It's an active notion. And the important word for me that's probably not, I don't know if you can see it in there, is the word belonging. Next slide, please. And so when we think about social inclusion and we think about integration, that word belonging, I think, is a really important addition to how people often talk about integration. Usually when we talk about integration, we focus on a narrower definition, which is really about access. How do we ensure that there's no discrimination or barriers in people's ability to access things like education, employment, housing? And these are important. But is that capturing what we mean by inclusion? Is that capturing belonging? A wider definition of integration really focuses on people participating fully in their community, being able to be full members and being able to achieve their goals within the areas of the economy, their social life, the political life of the community. And these aspects of belonging are the things that have inspired us in our own work. When we look at social integration, we've been developing a model where we try to capture the complexity of what we mean by inclusion and integration. Next slide. And often what we do is we focus on this middle section, which is how do we improve the fit between an individual and their environment? How do we make sure that they have the language skills they need, the cultural knowledge they need, and access to these basic functional things that they need, like housing and employment and education and healthcare. And these are critical things, but that doesn't seem to embrace this deeper notion of belonging that we've just seen as a definition of inclusion. So we look at these wider aspects as well. First, we need to think about the broader social context that people are living in, the strength of their relationships to other people within and outside of their community. We need to think about the community itself, and whether that community is open and welcoming, or whether that community is discriminatory and shuts people off into this new environment they find themselves in. But inclusion and integration more generally requires changes on both sides. And a person can change themselves as much as they want to, but if the community is not willing to reach out and connect with them, to include them, it will not be enough. And we have seen in our other research with other communities examples of healthcare providers who won't recognize interim federal health insurance because it's inconvenient for them to use it. We have seen, and every newcomer knows about this, it doesn't matter how much experience you have from the country you've come from, if you don't have Canadian experience, you cannot get access to a job that's commensurate with your training and with your education. And in the housing market, newcomers can be discriminated against because they can't bring references from the local communities. These means that we need to think about inclusion at the level of the social as well as at the level of the individual. So when we're talking about how we support inclusion for newcomer communities, we must continue to support those communities in terms of accessing the kinds of skills and language training that they need that's appropriate to their needs. And QED is remarkable in the work that they've been doing in this area. We also need to be thinking about how we build inclusive environments. And the environment includes the media. It includes the political discourse that we hear. It includes institutions that facilitate people's access, and neighborhoods and communities that welcome their new neighbors and their new members and bring them in. And lastly, we need to be sure that we continue to recognize and respect that newcomers are very innovative in how they decide to negotiate the environment that they find themselves in. And they can identify the ways they want to be included, and we should be thinking about listening to them, trusting their choices, and following their lead in this area. Next slide. Thank you very much, and if you want any more information about the project we've been working on, we have many social media ways of reaching out to us, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot.